Tai, could you tell me how you feel about religion in our Pasifika community?
Oh, snap.
Oh, wow. I don't know.
Religion in our Pasifika community.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Like, I could speak for hours on this.
Oh, well. Yes. I am.
Ooh, this is a tough one.
Could you just tell us how you feel about religion in the Pasifika community?
Religion. I wouldn't know. I haven't been to church in ages.
Because I always have debates with my friends and who often sort of reach the same sort of conclusion, is that religion is sort of morphed into sort of becoming almost replacing a lot of our Pacific values.
I feel that religion in our community is a big importance to our cultures. It plays an important role, I guess, in families.
I think it's a real massive part in like Samoan and Tongan culture, but it's not as big in Māori culture.
My parents were like everywhere, so I was like exposed to a lot of Samoan churches, so like Ifakasa and Bihokisi, even Catholic churches. But that was because my parents were like hara kikiki like champs.
Essentially, I think what has happened is 200 years ago, missionaries came into the Pacific and they offered something that was advanced, much more advanced in terms of like the Western world. So, you know, after that, I feel like a lot of the Pacific are actually brainwashed.
My understanding of religion, it's all about you and God. Yeah, they always say that, but really, like, we never really perceive it.
I feel like we make it so much bigger than it is.
I believe that even if I do have an opinion on this, it doesn't take away from some of the beautiful things that have happened through that space of people gathering and worshipping God, and also coming together in gatherings.
What kind of cultural values do you feel have been replaced by the introduction of religion?
I think Catholicism in the Pacific was quite easy to sort of swallow because it aligned quite closely with Pacific values.
But fast forward 200 years later, it's just been implemented so deep into the Pacific that it's just become a way of life. From that has sort of sprung up this whole establishment on every Pacific island that, like, you know, it's all founded in God.
I reckon believing in something is a really good thing. I don't know about religion.
Have you ever felt compelled to explore religion at all?
Oh yeah. I always like exploring. It's like anything, I'm pretty curious about everything.
I consider myself agnostic. I do believe there's something spiritual. I can't put it on one thing yet. Still don't know what that is, still exploring. But I find it real interesting that as Pacific, we have such a culture and such a history of not just mythology, but, you know, real awesome, empowering figures. Māori, as an example, you know, Tangaroa and the sea. You know, we have real rich history and real things that we can embrace.
Pacific Islanders were already worshipping gods, and now you have this sort of structural system, this westernized notion of what God is being implemented. I think it was kind of like almost inevitable.
Do you think that it is an essential part to our culture at all?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a part of us. I was born in a Christian home, but my parents, they were religious and they're strict, but they gave us the choice. So my dad had this thing where he didn't want us to be Mormon. And then before he died, he told all of us, I don't care what church you guys go to, as long as you guys are out of the house on Sunday, going to any church, then I'll be all good.
I definitely believe in God, even though I feel like sometimes my lifestyle may not portray that. But I do believe in heaven and hell.
I guess the generation before us, do you think it's hard to discuss with them?
Yeah.
once you use the church to sort of control and dictate how people behave in terms of like, if you do this, like God's going to be angry at you, it sort of really restricts who we are as a people.
I think you can go to church every Sunday and not be religious. Because you can go and block your ears, like, not physically block your ears, but just like nothing will be going in, like how you can go to school and learn nothing.
But like, it's one thing to go to church, man, it's another to like sit there and not really understand what your whakea was saying.
And how do you feel about that?
I just think it's sad because like, you know, you want to grow and you want to learn more, but then that's like I'm kind of like restricting myself. Like even my sister, even my little brother, like my brother's like, why should I go to church with you, Dad? I don't even understand. You know, it's just like sad for me.
When you were younger, did you feel from an early age that you're agnostic?
Yeah, very young. I've had to understand why, or I've understood why that was, and I think that was just the people, you know, so I can't stipulate that, you know, religion's bad because people were bad teachers.
Growing up, I don't think I had a choice, but I had to go to church. I had to be part of, I guess, the youth, or had to be there for local time or prayer time. And I think that's kind of why I personally drifted away.
The way my dad's views are kind of like restricting us from having the relationship that my dad has with God.
Have you ever witnessed that same situation with perhaps friends?
Definitely. Like, especially when you have like traditional parents. I think it's just hard when you have like traditional parents. They're very focused and very set on how they see things, and so it's like kind of like my way or no way.
Do you think that this is a topic that isn't often talked about, or do you think it needs to be talked about more?
Yeah, I reckon if you talk about it, maybe it could open up some more doors for some people, but also some people are pretty like solid in their mindsets. What do you call it? Like stubborn? I reckon it's talked about a lot. And more like debated.
Do you think it's bettered our way of living, or do you think it's held us back?
It depends how you see it. I feel like we have advanced quite exponentially in the last 100 to 200 years due to not religion but sort of colonial tools, right? I feel like had we not been touched in the Pacific by anybody on the outside, I feel like we would have advanced on our own.
It's hard not to look at a lot of information and see what religion's purposes were when it was introduced. Just knowing that we were spiritual human beings at the start. But I got corrected this one time that, you know, who follows who.
I would say that my journey with God right now is way more genuine than it was growing up.
Like, I've had my experiences of like trying to like go to another church, and that's like, no, you stay here and you live whakasa. I don't know. It wasn't a good experience for me because I had like the other church members were like, no, like you can convince your dad, and then I wasn't gonna push my dad. Like, I wasn't gonna like force him to let me go. Like, so I was very complacent and I just stayed.
I find it interesting how religion, and mostly in the Christianity sense, has come in, I guess, not pushed that to the side. I think there's a lot of things that still embrace both of them. I feel as people we had something, and it's been kind of changed.
I like full on, I'll bet my whole life on our own independent and advancement.
I honestly, like I used to think that it did hold us back, but I met some wonderful people that they embrace the gospel, and they're wonderful people. So who am I to judge that? You know, that this is something that's definitely helped them get to where they needed to be. So I can't say that it's pulled us all back, but I think it is for some people.
Last, but absolutely not least.
All right.
Do you believe in anything yourself? Do you believe in anything? Do you believe in anything yourself? And if so, what is it?
Do I believe in anything?
Yeah, I can probably think about it in my mind a lot better than I can speak with my words, but I'll try anyway. So I think like it's closer to like Buddhism. Everything has a little part of God in it, or like in them. We're all part of God, and like all are a bit of God.
Yeah, I think the word at the moment is agnostic, and I think it's time bound for me.
Yes, I do. I do believe in God, and I do believe in Jesus, and I do believe that they are different, and I do believe in the Holy Spirit, and that is also different.
Yep, I believe in something. I grew up Catholic, whole family's Catholic, but as I sort of progressed and began to think for myself and ask a lot of questions, especially those questions that you ask yourself when you're like 7 years old but you weren't allowed. I haven't come to a conclusion, but I have come to a much more peaceful space where I'm able to sort of look at it through two different lenses as opposed to like a very tunnel vision lens, and sort of just come up with my conclusions based on the environment that I'm in. Yeah, I think, like personally, I think there's no doubt that there is something.
My definition of being spiritual is like, embracing the fact that, this is all moving in flow and there are things that are happening.
I do believe that there is a God. I believe that he has helped me get where I am now. Like I'm not forcing it or anything, but I do encourage like a lot of people just to, have a relationship with God, I guess.
I can't describe who's pulling the strings. I just know that there's more that's happening. Hopefully one day it will write it out for me in plain English. But I just consider myself someone that's exploring that spiritual space.
In terms of sort of your one narrative sort of religion and sort of conforming to that, I definitely am against that. I do believe in like a higher power, or in terms of just something else being out there, and sort of not making you strive to be better, but knowing that sort of we as humans are not the sort of limit.
It's definitely not a white old man with a long beard. If anything, it's probably a black woman,